While many dentists get out of dental school and jump right into work, others end up years into a practice and feel like they're chained to their chair or spinning their wheels. At Duckett Ladd, we've discovered that there are 6 phases of long-term practice success. On this podcast, we'll explore each phase of success and help you on your growth journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dental Momentum Podcast powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with another video to help you get better. And today, guys, we're continuing the practice transition series that we've done here, the 6-part series to really help dental practice owners understand the market, the options, transition process, and what all that looks like. And today I got my good friend, Dr. Will Little from GPS Dental on here. Will, appreciate you joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun, man. And what I want to do, recently met you not too long ago and just really connect, and you get just a solid individual, guys, here. If you haven't met him, reach out, but solid individual, solid company. And what I want to get out of Will's brain today is we're bringing the DSO perspective. So Will is part owner, I guess, of a DSO. And I want to, go through the process of what a DSO is looking like or looking for in purchasing a practice, and then giving the DSO perspective of that transition process and what that looks like. So, Will, you ready? Let's do this. It's going to be fun, man.
Yeah, let's get it. Absolutely.
Love it. Well, let's do this. I want you to unpack your story here just a little bit. You've got a very unique story, and I love it. Once I sat down and started talking to you. So just unpack your story. Go back to dental school, graduating dental school, getting out, what'd you do to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely feel like I've got a little bit of a unique perspective here coming from, a lot of different worlds. Look, hey, when I went to dental school, just like every other kid out of college, and fully planned on, either purchasing a practice or starting my own or something like that. And going down the private practice dentistry road for, I guess, essentially ever was kind of the thought process for me. I mean, when I was in dental school or early out, that definitely wasn't, doing what I'm doing now wasn't on my radar, I don't think it's on a lot of people's radar, but, you kind of fall into it in certain ways, right? So, out of school, I bought a practice from a local dentist here, great guy. I mean, Dr. Ron Burnett here in Jonesboro, Arkansas, one of the best people on the planet. He showed me the ropes of the practice life, showed me, a lot about, what I didn't know clinically, which was basically everything at that point. So you come out of school, you really don't know what you don't know. And I was very fortunate to have Dr. Burnett, teach me the ropes in that regard. So also, another stroke of luck thing, a buddy of mine from dental school that was a year behind me, Dr. Hunter Smith, he also moved back to Jonesboro and bought a practice here in town. And then, really it happened pretty organically on kind of how we grew into what we did now. Our first thought was, hey, let's, you got one, I've got one, let's not be competitors. Let's be colleagues here. Let's go do one together. Look, we're in the same market. We're young dentists, we're semi-entrepreneurial at the time, let's get in here and do one together. So, and we did that, and we had, we got really lucky. We didn't know what we were doing, but, the first practice that we acquired was, it was 100% acquisitions, not really what we do anymore. But back then, that's sort of what we, thought that's what we thought happened. And that's what you thought everybody did. There's you either own one or you sold it 100%. And, anymore, as you well know, and hopefully what you're trying to show on the podcast is that's not the only option out there for you. I mean, there, partnership groups and, there's all kinds of different structures. Obviously, we didn't know that at the time. Bought a practice 100% and had a lot of success with it. Great doctor, great practice. And that's been a flagship one for us since the beginning. And, obviously just naivety at the beginning, we thought we were pretty good at it. And I will do another one, we'll do another one. And then all of a sudden, I say, the 6th one is really kind of when we started the DSO, which was it was about a practice an hour and a half from here, a little bit north of Memphis. And it was a junior associate running it, not a seller doctor or anything like that. And it was when we made our first, administrative hire with our exec VP of operations. And, that's where we started it. And then from then on, we're like, okay, there's this whole world out here of DSOs that we didn't really know existed. And let's see how far deep into it we can go and what kind of company we can build. So we've, from then, that was 2015 that we acquired / partnered with our first practice. And at this point, we're up to 27 partner practices within GPS Dental. and certainly super proud of what we built. We're trying to be one of the best organizations, or the best organization for dentists to work in the country. And that's the goal of us. We're never going to be the biggest, we're never going to be the one. You're never going to look up and see GPS acquired or partnered with 80 practices in a year. It's not really our MO. Our MO is to partner with quality practices and quality dentists, and be a great place for patients to come, a great place for dentists to work. And for being a dentist, that's certainly the perspective that we wanted to have as we built and grew this company.
Yeah. Well, go back just a little bit. So you said getting out of dental school, did you even have any inkling that you would go down this path? I mean, or that I'm going to say the DSO thing was a thing. Did you know that at that time?
No, I mean, sort of, it was, look, when you're in dental school, everybody has the bad connotation, right, of the DSO, big bad DSO, guy going, one of your classmates goes out to work for one of the big boys, and, it's, oh, you're going to work for, so-and-so, right? At the end of the day, look, there's good DSOs and there's bad DSOs, and there's good private practices and there's bad private practices, like everything, right? So it's, you got to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. So certainly you kind of get you get that connotation in dental school, and then you figure out, it's like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't maybe these guys aren't out for nefarious reasons. Maybe they're, maybe some of them are doing pretty good out there in the world, and treating patients right, and treating doctors right. And so you start to learn that pretty quick after you get out of dental school, especially when you have some of your best friends in school go work for, people and have good experiences, and that's ultimately what helps and build in that regard is having people with good experiences. So, I didn't really know it, that I knew they were there. I didn't really understand really what they were all about, out of dental school or anything like that, but, learned pretty quickly. So for sure. We, in Arkansas, we have Rock Dental out of Little Rock. It's a big DSO group, and I think they've done it the right way throughout. There's been some people out there that have helped us throughout as well. So, I just tried to learn as much as I could out of school, and try to keep my options open. That's what I think anybody should do in any industry, right? It's just, hey, keep your ears to the ground a little bit, get a pulse on what's going on in the organization, get a pulse on what's going on in the industry as a whole, and then try to kind of find your niche, fit what you think you want to do out there. I certainly went down more of the business of dentistry pathway than the clinical side. I've got good friends that did the opposite. They've really built quite a career out of the clinical side. They've gone out and taught CE, other than just private practice, and I sort of went down more of the business road, which is certainly what I enjoyed the most, and realized after, 5-6 years of doing it, that's certainly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Business side fires you up, doesn't it?
For sure. For me anyway, no doubt.
Well, do this just a bit, Will, if you don't mind. So listeners out there, maybe they've heard the word, is that a word, DSO? They've heard the acronym.
It can be, certainly fine to me.
Yeah. So unpack maybe what a DSO is to a degree, and then apply it to specifically you guys. So how do you, partner with practices, and how do you come in and provide them support and that sort of thing?
No, absolutely. DSO stands for Dental Support Organization. For anybody that doesn't know, we take the support side of it really, really, really seriously. It's a DSO is really just a legal agreement, right? It's really nothing more than that. We to provide services for dental practices, right? And that can mean a bajillion different things, right? That can mean, for us, we're what we say, or what we call light touch. We're very, very hands off when it comes to, extremely hands off when it comes to the clinical aspect of it. And I think, if you're, one of your listeners out there, clinically autonomous is a buzzword that gets kicked around a lot. But, if you're thinking about partnering with a group, or thinking about going down that road, and there's a lot of them are, but that's number one on the list should be clinical autonomy. If you've got somebody over you, having, meetings about, what you're diagnosing, anything like that, or somebody, really looking at x-rays all the time, and somebody over your shoulder, that's probably not the road you want to go down, because your life's going to be pretty miserable in your practice career. So, we are what's called a clinically autonomous partner-based organization. There's a few of us out there, obviously, meaning when we come in and partner with a practice, we mean the partner word. We actually have, we do deals where we leave seller doctors with 30%, 40%, 20% equity in their current practices. And that, is a big deal. We feel like moving forward for lots of reasons. We think that, that dentistry is best served with owners at the practice level. We don't like the serial associate game. I mean, we obviously have associates, but our goal is that every associate or every person that works with their two hands in an organization has some semblance of equity in the company, whether it be in our holdco or DSO, whether it be in at the practice level or things like that. We take that really seriously. We think it's best for the profession. We think it's best for the doctors, and we think it's ultimately best for patients, which is what we care about. So, but a DSO is just that, right? It's a structural type thing, that to try to provide support to dental offices. Some people, and that, like I said, that can mean a full gambit of insurance, billing, payroll, IT, accounting, all those things that go into it. That can mean one or two of those. That can mean all of those. That can mean a group that forces a lot of those services on you, and that can mean a group that kind of lets you pick and choose what you want. We're certainly more on the what we call a la carte side, which is no two practices that you see with us look identical. They really don't. If you went into one of our practices, you would have no idea that it's a GPS practice. It's each practice has their own heartbeat. They have their own pulse, and they treat our services that we provide a little bit differently. But we just want to be that partner to help the practice grow, be a sounding board for the doctor, come in and provide support in some key areas, and try to make the practice better long term. Also, that's because the doctor has equity, we want to be sure that we provide true value in our services for that doctor, so that practice is worth more down the road. When they go to liquidate with us, which is we can probably a segue into the next portion on that, right? So.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And you hit on a lot of things there. And I want to unpack. So a doctor out there today, right? And I'm going to really simplify this, maybe too simple, but that's how my mind works. Doctor out there today is looking and thinking about a practice transition. They've worked X amount of years, they're burnt out, or they're ready to make the next, go on to their next. Talk about the pros and the cons a little bit, Will, of, I'm going to say simplified two options. You can sell to another doctor,
yeah,
right? Or you can sell to a DSO. And I know those aren't the only two options, but I just want to simplify this. What are the pros? You hit on a lot of them, but what are the pros of selling to a DSO? And interested if you've got any cons there too. I mean, you don't have to say a con if you don't want, but what are the benefits?
No, there are. Yeah. So, just really, 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 top level here. Obviously we, I came out of school and bought a dental practice, right? If Dr. Burnett didn't sell that practice, if he sold that practice, to a DSO, I probably am not sitting here right now. So I sympathize with a lot of guys that, younger dentists that are trying to get into ownership and practices and stuff like that. And look, I mean, there's a market out there for them. Is the thing, that's the part that hopefully people understand, is that those doctor to doctor transactions, they're still a big part of dentistry and the dental industry as a whole. And that's fine. That's a great route to go down. I think it's for somebody that's at the very, very end of their career, meaning, need to sell and walk away. That's probably the only option for you is a doctor to doctor type deal, because that person that's coming in is going to work the practice. Number one. Number two, they need to work the practice. They don't need to pay the seller doctor in theory, especially if it's a smaller practice. We can have an entire hour-long probably conversation on what a guy should do when he purchases a dental practice. So that's for another episode, I suppose. But there's a lot of things that can happen there, especially the smaller practices. Look, it's when you're talking in that, because DSOs typically, we need a practice, not need really. I mean, we're targeting a practice that's a little bit larger, right? More, million plus collections, stuff like that. So, the $600,000 to $900,000 revenue practice is still a great target for a single solo doctor looking for a gig of his own, want to build a practice, want to build a family-based practice, that's great. And that's a great part of the industry, and we need to keep that going for sure. But, secondarily to that is what we can provide in a DSO setting, which is, frankly, number one, the valuations that, that DSOs can pay for dental practices are quite a bit larger. So that, there is a monetary aspect of it. We're not going to pretend there's not, and we're going to win in that regard against a single solo practitioner basically every time,
So hit on that a little further, Will, if you don't mind. I don't mean to interrupt there, but I get that question all the time is, Again, I'll simplify. Why can DSOs pay so much more for a practice? And so elaborate on that just a little bit more. Why are typically the valuations on a DSO sale more than a doctor to doctor?
Yeah, well, number one, the practices are worth it. In dentistry, it's you know, everybody's a little bit pigeonholed because only dentists can buy and own dental practices for the most part. DSOs have it's not necessarily a way around it. We have doctors, I'm licensed in multiple states. We have other doctors that, that own equity in practices in their respective states, so there are ways, not going to say ways around it. It's, regulated and you got to play by the rules, which all of us hopefully do. But it's, that's certainly a big part of it is, the biggest part of it's lending though is the biggest part of it. There's no doubt about that. Throughout history, the guy, especially I was like for me, when I went and purchased my first dental practice, I really, even at 80, sort of 60, 70% collections, the banks are typically not going to lend you, or they might now, I don't know, but they wouldn't lend me 100% at the time. It was, the seller doctor had to hold back some of the note, and, you had to kind of go through that whole thing. So a lot of it's lending because, if a single solo practitioner walked up with $1 million collection practice and said, hey, I need $2 million to buy this practice, bank's going to laugh you out of there for the most part. So I mean, that's really just not industry standard, which, what is industry standard? But these practices on the open market are worth, if these businesses weren't in dentistry, they're worth, these multiples that, that DSOs are kind of out there paying right now. And it's it's a good thing for the seller doctors. It's definitely feels to me like a little bit of a seller's market right now, but no, I mean, first it's lending. Second, it's the proof in the pudding, right? We have a proof of concept. We have years of partnering with practices and what they were before, and then what they are afterwards. Which with us, it's typically about a 7 to 8% EBITDA margin bump based on what we get from a supply lab type difference and all of the things that we can do and the little knobs that we can turn. So so we get a little bit of a, what they call pro forma in, to be able to pay a little bit more for the practice. Because look, hey, what it's going to be, a guy that's coming in to buy a practice 100%, there's no proof of concept. You really don't even know if you can, produce what, what's there. You don't know the patients. You don't know anything about it. For us, we're going to have continuity of doctor. The doctor is going to, and the second biggest part of that is the fact that we're doing equity rolls, right? It's a 60, 40, 70, 30 equity rolls where, so really the cash at close outlay for us isn't the full, valuation of the practice. It's the full valuation of the practice minus what equity the owner doctor is going to have moving forward. So, it's if it's a $2 million collection practice and we evaluate the practice at $3 million EV, right? And we do a for easy math, a 2/3 deal, then our cash at close layout's only going to be $2 million. Then the owner doctor is going to have $1 million essentially of rolled equity back into the company to roll forward. And, and there's a huge component of that, which is, you're going to get monthly distributions with a group like us. It's not the case with all of them. That's important to you. A group like us is very, very beneficial. And then number two, you'll have the opportunity to liquidate that equity at a private equity recap. So we can go into that too, but that's a whole convoluted system. But just know that, when you have equity with it, within a DSO, that it's worth, a pretty fair amount, and numbers and multiples get kicked around on what, hey, this is worth this and that. We try not to get into that at GPS. We try to give a more of a ballpark, hey, look, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what's out there. We try to overpromise and underdeliver if at all humanly possible, because we want to be sure that we're, on the right playing field. But that's sort of, why DSOs can pay more, what the structure looks like to do it, and if a single solo guy did an equity roll, right, he'd be able to put a higher valuation on it, but typically that's not the case. So it's that's where it's a structural game one, a lending game two, and a proof of concept game three, really, I guess, is probably the main reasons I would say the DSOs can win out on most deals.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm going to dive just a little bit deeper into, you're kind of going into your structure, and use some big words there, equity rolls. And I'm going to really try to simplify this down for the listener a little bit. So in your model that you just laid out there, I think you said, let's use your example, if that's fine, a $2 million practice, say you valued it 3 and you come in and buy 2/3. Yep. And that's what you hear the word JV deal. Is that what you're referring to? Kind of a JV deal where you don't buy 100%, but 2/3 in your example?
Exactly. That's a JV or, joint venture. They say, where we're coming in and partnering with a practice, and this is, this is with a guy that's got, it's got some life left in the game, it's, and that's part of it too is, if you're looking to transact with the DSO, you really want to do it where you have a little bit of life left in the practice, right? Not just, I mean, obviously for continuity and for our sake, we love to have the seller doctors on as long as humanly possible, right? But, secondarily to that is you're going to have equity in this thing moving forward. So, if you've got some life left in it, and you want to help that practice grow along with us, then that next bite that you're going to get is just going to be higher if the practice grows. And that's just all there is to it. With us, we don't necessarily care if the practice, grow. We don't partner or acquire practices, thinking, oh, look at what it could be, right? It's not the case. But, if you're gonna own equity, you're gonna still be practicing, you might as well kind of, work and grow the practice so that, the monetary value of it later is higher and the practice is in a better place for whoever your eventual successor is,
Yeah.
So,
So in your,
that's,
so
yeah.
in your example, Will, the 2/3, that doctor's retaining, the selling doctor, right? Still retaining 33% or
That's
1/3
right. Yeah,
of the equity. And that's what you're referring to as the equity role.
that's right.
And what happens, and you kind of went into it, but what happens to that equity? That 1/3 they still hold when you say, I don't know if you said second by the apple here. We talked about that before we
Yeah.
recorded, but what's that 1/3 look like for them and how's it exit?
It's treated a lot of different ways, and that equity portion is very important, especially if you're trying to vet dental groups on what on what ultimately what you can get out of a potential deal is what happens with that equity, right? It's a look, originally, the first, I don't know about the first, but several groups, what'll happen is you'll take that equity and you'll say, all right, you get whatever that dollar value is, and you get it rolled into their holding company or management company, right? And then that turns into a fully illiquid, type asset, where there's no distributions, there's no real tangible assets. When you have stock in a company, is essentially what it turns into, right? Now there's a lot of groups that really don't treat it like that. Our partner-based organizations, like you mentioned earlier, these JV type structures, we think are really beneficial to the doctor. Admittedly biased because it's what we do, but it's but yeah, exactly that, right? So that 33% means you get 33% of that dental practice that you have right there. It's not of what own. A lot of the equity out there in the DSO world in any industry, it's like, hey, what do I actually own? Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, you own exactly what you said. It's 33% of the practice, right? That you have, that your two hands are working. You're going to get distributions based on that. And then with us, later on down the road, 4 or 5 years when we transact with a private equity group again, which we did last November, we'll probably do it again here in about 4 years, is you'll get that money fully liquid. So you'll have that 33% will turn into real tangible dollars in 4 to 5 years. So, our goal for the seller doctor is to, you'll have the cash at close, you'll have, 4 or 5 years worth of distributions. Then you'll have a second bite of the apple where that, in our example, where that 33% is fully transacted. So then you'll have 100% of liquid cash dollars in, typically for right now, our cycle will be about 4 years probably. Then at that point, you have the opportunity to take some of that money with our group. Now, I can't speak for anybody else, but with our group to take some of that money and buy into our holdco, and right along with this, buy some shares in our holdco. And back in November, all of our partners that were JV partners turned some of that equity into holding company equity. And then, from then on, there's, a continued roll. And every time you recap, you can sell and roll again. So it's it's certainly that equity is a very powerful thing, and how it's treated is very, very, very important, right? It's because you can lose in cash at close. You can take less money on a cash at close type situation, but win really hard in the long term, right? Based on the structure, right? I'm not trying to say you shouldn't take a value for your practice. Cash at close, the first part, is also very important, but at the same time, we can come in with another DSO structure. We can be lower on a cash at close number at the beginning, have the seller doctor roll more equity, right? And that actually be a much better deal for the doctor long term, especially depending on the life, right? I would say the shorter you have in the profession left, 2-3 years or whatever, the more at close you want to try to get a hold of, right? Because you're not going to have the reins on the practice long term, right? If you're going to go, if you have 10, 15 years left in the profession and you're wanting to transact to the DSO for, look, I don't want to run the business, I want to, I just want to come in and do dentistry. I've got a good practice, but, I've got 3 or 4 kids at home and I just don't need to be spending the amount of time, outside of the practice. I want to do clinical dentistry, whatever. And you need to really pay attention to what happens with that equity, because the longer you have it, the more important it is. The longer you're getting those distributions, the more chances you have for, liquidation events. So, that's sort of the rundown I see with that equity.
Yeah. And in addition to, after the transaction, right, in this JV deal, in addition to the distributions, that seller doctor is still staying on and getting compensated for the clinical dentistry they're doing.
Absolutely.
So that's
yeah.
their total compensation.
Yeah. And with us, and I think probably anybody else, they'd sign an associate contract with the practice that they own. So, they're, turn into an employee of a practice that they're on both sides of. So, definitely they're compensated in 2 ways, compensated with distributions and percent collections.
Yeah. So talk a little bit, Will, just real quick on the transition process. So say you're talking to a doctor out there and you guys, a deal's made, you agree on terms and everything. What's that transition process look like? How big of a pain in the, pain in the butt is it? What does it look like? That sort of thing.
Yeah. We try to make it less of a pain in the butt, but for sure is a little bit at the beginning. The transition process is typically, around 60 to 90 days on the, 90 on the long end. I mean, I don't know that we've ever had, deals drag out that far. Obviously it depends on how quick a lot of these things can get done. But at the beginning, first week or 2, there's a diligence process that every group's going to go through. They're going to request some information if they haven't already, and build a kind of a portfolio of your practice just to be sure that we have a pulse, and everything that was kind of said previously is the truth, right? Everything that, that we don't unpack anything that we don't want to see, or anything like that. So, we try to do most diligence on the front end when we're evaluating the practice, really, so that the diligence process at the beginning, after we've signed the LOI, is really just confirmatory. We already know what's going on. We have to show our lenders, though, and things of that nature, what the practice looks like, and then we go from there. But really, beyond that, it's it's an attorney game. Also, it's why, hey, look, if you're out there listening and you're thinking about transacting with the DSO or anything like that, when you're trying to bring on legal counsel, please use somebody that has some DSO experience. These deals are convoluted. There's a lot of documents. There's a lot of things that are a lot of moving parts and pieces. So, using your buddy down the street is kind of hard in one of these deals, because if they haven't been exposed to this, it's certainly a learning curve to, for anybody. I mean, me included at the beginning. I didn't know what a DSO was, regulatory at all, but now I do after seeing a bunch of them. Right. So, so yeah. And then the second part is, the contractual aspect of it. There's a lot of documents and things that go into it. And like I say, it's definitely want to have good representation. Definitely want to have, good people in your corner, like you guys are doing for your clients, Jared. You definitely want to have a great accounting team on your side that's got numbers prepared for you, that's easy to read. When I see, numbers from an accounting group, I love it, because I know that's what's going to, I know the diligence process is going to go very quickly. Right. And then behind that, if you got an attorney that's got some DSO experience that can show you the ropes and make sure we're not missing anything, that's a great thing to have on your side. So, the team you build out for the transition aspect certainly drives it. If you've got an experienced team that knows what they're doing, you can get one of these things closed in 30 to 45 days without too much trouble at all. And no surprises. But it's like I say, a little bit of diligence, a little bit of legal work, and then at the very end, it's getting in and meeting the staff and getting them all on board and stuff like that. And it's a little bit easier than you think. Everybody thinks the staffs are going to freak out, but and sometimes there's definitely going to be questions and concerns and things of that nature. But for each of our deals, we come on site, either Hunter or I or both of us come on site and talk to the staff and be sure that they know that this is a partnership and that we're additive and supplementary only. We're not going to use the word acquire. We're not going to use the word bought. It's not the way it is anyway. I mean, it's a true partnership. It's, we're coming to be additive and supplementary to the practice. We're going to come in and help, the practice grow. We're not going to come in and reinvent the wheel, things like that. So that's typical transition process for us.
Yeah, that's good, man. Just a couple more questions here. And man, this is gold here. Your wealth of knowledge. If you're talking to a doctor out there today that is considering selling, right? And I don't know if I have to put a time range on this, but Maybe
Yeah.
they're like, I'll say 5 years out. They're like, hey, I've got 5 years more of clinical dentistry, and then I just want to be done. What advice would you have for them? Like, what, two things, I guess. What do they need to be thinking about now to maximize the value of their practice? I guess from that standpoint, and then operationally, anything they need to be thinking about now, to do ahead of time rather than, wait. And then they're 1 year out and they're like, oh crap, I'm done. I'm burnt out. I'm done. I missed the boat here.
Yeah. Look, obviously from the business aspect of it, the number one thing is to, work with your accountant, look at your numbers, pay attention to what's going on within the practice. If you're looking at transacting, right, know what these key numbers are for you, know what EBITDA is, know what yours is, of your practice, and understand what drives that, understand what's going on within that. What you don't want to do is look up and, and if had, your dental supply bill is just insane because you haven't been looking at it, right? And it's 11% when it could have been 6 or 7% of the practice. That's real dollars right there. So, and that's stuff that, that's stuff that you really can't fake. You know what I mean? It's, so really, if you're looking at, let's just say, year prior, right? Like I'm thinking I'm transacting in a year, get with your CPA, sit down, or whoever's doing your books, and sit down and look at it. It's like, hey, what's going on? What looks out of whack? What can I improve? Kind of learn the industry standard numbers on, what overhead's supposed to look like, and be sure that you're, kind of within those ranges. And if not, if there's something you can do to, to fix that, well, then do it. Look, I mean, and then also look, I know every single solo practitioner runs a lot of personal stuff through their business, and that's fine. That's great. That's the advantages of being a practice owner. But if you're thinking about transacting, you need to be sure that you're kind of writing, those down. You need to know which ones are personal, so that when you're coming back and evaluating the practice, you don't get a bunch of personal stuff stuck into your profit and loss, right? You need to be sure that we pull all that kind of stuff out, so we get a true, value of the business. So knowing your numbers, there's really not a secret sauce to it, right? Knowing your numbers, paying attention to what they are, being sure that you're, obviously don't take on any new debt, don't buy any, huge pieces of equipment in that particular time. You want to try to make what you're trying to accomplish. You're not trying to, fake anything, right? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to have a 12-month period, of that the practice is what it is. This is, I can sit down and feel good that this dental practice is very, very well represented in the last 12 months, right? And that's certainly as a practice owner trying to transition, into a DSO type partnership, having that solid 12 months, that really nothing crazy happened. You knew what your numbers were, you had your goals, and this is the dental practice as it sits, is a great thing to have, and it's certainly something that we feel better about, kind of, going into a partnership with that, and the timeline, look, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's, if you wait to the tail end, it's really hard with DSOs, because, we're especially us, we're not in the business of partnering with a practice or replacing the doctor. That's not what we want to do. Not because we won't, we just don't think it's best for the practice and the staff and the patients. We need to get to know the practice, and we need to get to know everybody before, if we come and say, hey, we're partnering with a DSO group and Dr. X is retiring in 3 months, it's just not a fit for us. You're not going to get the most value out of your practice if that's the case. Definitely when you're thinking about transacting with a DSO, plan on being there for just a little bit. It doesn't take long. I mean, look, but a sell and walk away type situation is typically not what's best for the practice. Even an individual deal, you want to stick around for a period and help transition the practice anyway. But look, 4 to 5 years, to your point, Jared, is an awful sweet spot, right? If you're kind of thinking in that area, that's certainly a good time to be thinking about, hey, look, if you're going down the DSO route, that's certainly a great time to do it when you have a little bit of life left and control the reins of the practice a little bit, and then obviously longer than that, it can be much more beneficial too. If you got 15, 20 years left and you're just tired of the business aspect of it, having equity, like we're talking about long term, where you can take advantage of multiple turns of this private equity game, can be very, very lucrative for you. If you have a huge dental practice, very high margins, and maybe it's not beneficial for you to sell to a DSO. That would be the case, right? Where, if you're 35, 40 years old and you have 20 years left, and, you have a big practice and super high margins, then transacting is probably not in your best monetary interest, unless it's for a reason of, like, look, hey, I just need some help within the practice, or need help practice growth or things like that, right? But, you know, at any stage of your career, and that's kind of what we try to tell people and anybody in general, any stage in your career, you know, a DSO partnership could be very beneficial for you, or it couldn't, depending on what your goals are, right? You don't think that DSOs are a fit for every single practice owner out there. They're certainly not. You know, that's not the case at all. But what we want to do is for those guys that want that partnership, that want help with the growth of their practice, for instance, that want out of the business of dentistry, or, you know, to your point, retiring in 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, and want to, you know, transact their practice at you know, a peak, so, you know, so to speak, you know, and want help as they, you know, transition out into retirement, help finding that successor, help, you know, bringing that successor on, transitioning the practice to a new person long term. You know, a DSO partnership can be very, very beneficial to you. And, you know, look, hey, you know, the connotations are, you know, the industry is certainly going that way. The connotations are always going to be there from a DSO perspective, but hey, you know, call the reference list, you know, look on their website and look and see who the real doctors are, you know, not the people that, you know, we tell, you know, okay, here's references, but, you know, we encourage you to get on our website, look at, you know, a doctor, right? Any of them will, but, you know, look, we're all colleagues in this game. We're all going to talk to each other and help. So, you know, if you're considering a DSO, look on their website, I don't care where it is, find a doctor, call that doctor, ask what that experience is. Make sure that, you know, it's a clinically autonomous organization. They're going to let you practice the way that you want to practice. Nothing happens along the way that's surprising. You know, do your due diligence on your end, Mr. Seller Doctor. We encourage that. You know, that's a big thing. You want to be sure that when you're going into one of these partnerships, that you have, you know, that you have full transparency. You know what's going on. You talk to references. You feel really comfortable with the group that you're going with. And there's several groups out there, you know, hopefully us included, that do a really nice job and really provide a great place for doctors to work, patients to be, you know, coming to the dentist, and, you know, employees to work.
Yeah. What you just said there is the key. And I think that's the goal of the episode is when you're looking at it, let's say a DSO transaction, is make sure you know that DSO that you're partnering with, make sure you're
Absolutely.
transparent. There's no smoke and mirrors, there's straight shooters, all that stuff. I mean, do your due diligence. It's a big decision, right? Huge decision in a doctor's life.
Yeah. I mean, be an educated seller, 100%. I mean, you know, to your point earlier, what can you do? I mean, you know, what can you do to help is, you know, you need to learn the industry, learn the players, you know, learn the differences in the structures, you know, see what's out there for you. It's very important, because the structure of the deal is very, very, very important. And it can be, you know, as you sell to a different DSO, and it can be, there's several times where we've looked at a deal and be like, hey, you know, it's probably, we're not a fit for you because these are your goals and our structure doesn't fit that. Right. You know, and that's certainly what you're trying to accomplish. Be an educated seller, you know, call references, you know, get an idea. Be sure you know what's going on within your business. Be sure you know what's going on with the DSOs that you're looking at. Vet them out, you know, so that you feel really comfortable going into it. It's your baby, it's your practice. It's awesome. You know, you built it from, you know, a lot of these guys from ground up, right? Or acquired it and, you know, and have treated it as your own for a long time. So, you know, we don't take that lightly. You know, we come into these places, these are family owned businesses. You know, these are, you know, these seller doctors, you know, their kids have grown up in these practices, and they, you know, it's a big deal for them to transact these things, you know, and to really, you know, set the pen and paper down and say, all right, you know, hey, I'm going to share this practice with somebody else. Right. And that's a big decision. So, you know, you know, especially with us, you know, we were practice owners, we're dentists, we know what you're going through. And, you know, we don't take that aspect of it lightly. And that's why we really try to take our time with each transaction, with each transition, to be sure that, you know, that we're providing the amount of time and care necessary to partner with that practice, and really feel like that the dentist and staff is entering into a partnership, not an acquisition, or not, you know, something on the other end of that. Right. That's our goal with it. And hopefully, you know, it should be a lot of DSOs goals. And that's what we're trying to accomplish out there.
That's good, man. I always use the analogy. These people have probably heard this 9 million times already, but, you know, looking at selling your dental practice, kind of like simple analogy, selling your car, right? I mean, if I were to go out to my truck right now and sell my car or sell my truck to somebody right there, I bet I can guarantee this. There's French fries in the cup holder.
That's it.
I bet I have French fries there from last night that my daughter ate half of and put the other ones there.
That's right.
And the French fries in the cup holder are what you referenced, Will, that 11% on dental supplies. Get your French fries out of the cup holder and clean your car first and get it down to a reasonable amount, so that when you make a transition, you get the most value. I'm going to get more for my truck if I wash it and clean out the French fries, as opposed to just selling it right now. So think about cleaning your car right now.
Absolutely. You don't have to, you know, there's no, like I say, there's no secret sauce. I mean, just paint it. anything you pay attention to matters, right? I mean, if you look at your bank account every day and, pay attention to what's going out of it, you're less of it's going to go out because you know what's going on, right? And that's really the main aspect of it, the whole measure what matters type thing. That's if you pay attention to it and you're getting monthly financials and you're paying attention to, you're just by virtue, you're not, a lot of times you don't have to do anything, and all of a sudden it becomes a better practice on paper just because you're looking at it and you have a pulse on what's going in and out. And that's even out. Look, if you're not transacting, you need to do that anyway. Like that,
exactly.
You need. I mean, that's not just a transaction. This is dentistry is certainly becoming. It used to 30 years ago, whatever. I mean, I wasn't there, but hang a shingle. Best of luck to you. Do pretty good. But the way that practices are. The amount of money that outlay with practices now, the student loan debt that's out there, if you're a younger dentist or anything like that, or anybody really, pay attention to those numbers. Get the French fries out of the cup holder, pay attention. You don't have to look every day, but every month or so is great to have that kind of stuff. Obviously, Jared, CPA background, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that we that you love to see for a practice owner. Can you, without changing staff, without changing a bunch of things, you can clean up a practice pretty easily and get in there and make some more money for you. Doing the same amount of dentistry, taking great care of people. You might as well have a great practice too behind that from a business aspect of it, right?
Yeah. You're speaking our language, man. What gets measured gets managed, right? I love it. Last question, Will, and this might be a big one. So I'm going to date this. We're July 2022, right?
Okay.
Interest rates are going up, inflation. How is that all recession, right? How is that all affecting, if any, transactions, I guess, on purchasing dental practices, valuations, that sort of thing? Is it lowering them? Is it slowing things down? What do you see in there?
Sadly, I think it's probably going to kick out more of the single solo practitioner doctors, right? As interest rates rise and the amount of money that outlay that's going into it. Obviously, the DSOs have a lot more leverage when it comes to interest rates, and we have a little bit more control over that with lenders, right? Because just a little bit bigger fish in the pond, so to speak. But look, I don't see a lot right now that's happening as far as evaluation changes or anything like that. I think it's been, the last couple of years have been really, really good for sellers. The multiples have certainly rose for seller doctors. The DSO world is very competitive. There's a lot of good groups out there that are putting forth, very competitive valuations, and there's brokerages out there that are doing a great job running, running great processes for their clients. That's another aspect of it that I think Jared's going to touch on at some point in the podcast. Is that's another part of your representation. Who your broker is very important. That between about who who they put in front of you, right? But just to answer your question directly, I haven't seen much in the last, I've been waiting on it too, same as you, same as everybody, right? Is, what's going on, but dentistry is, I'm not going to say recession proof. That's not the right word, because it certainly gets touched by, anything that takes money out of people's pockets is going to, is going to hurt when it comes to an industry, aspect of it. So you're talking about increase in interest rates, when you're talking about inflation, that's taking money directly out of people's pockets. And that's always a problem for, for any economy, right? But it's in dentistry, we're a touch shielded from it, especially with, the percentage of our game that's insurance. But, I still think, for the foreseeable future that it's a great market for sellers right now. It's highly competitive, especially as the amount of, as consolidation goes further, right? In the dental industry, there's going to be less practices, more DSOs, and that's good for sellers, right? So simple supply and demand. Early on, when there's a bajillion practices and very few DSOs, it's a less competitive market. The practices are going to transact for less. But now when you're talking about consolidation of an industry, which is a big buzzword term, right? How everybody talks about how consolidated is dentistry, right? How and nobody knows, right? It's some number in there, but that's going up directionally, right? But nobody has an idea what actual how consolidated this industry is. So, but just know, seller doctor, look, the further on you go, you don't want to, there's two schools of thought, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to hold on longer, and then the market be more consolidated. DSOs are going to get more competitive. The multiples are going to go up. And in 4 or 5 years, I can probably transact my practice for more money than I can now. That may be true. I don't know. However, the bird in the hand is kind of right now. It's really good time. And I don't know if multiples, if interest rates spike hard, if multiples, and valuations are going to drop because of the lending aspect of it from our end. I'm not sure, but certainly feels like a good time to be a seller doctor right now. It's not being touched right this very second with inflation and interest rates from the buy side. I don't care about those things right now personally. So, we'll see if that changes in 6 months or a year. And that just goes back to keeping your ear on the ground and, trying to keep a pulse in the industry and figuring out what's going on out there. But, I think dentistry is a great profession, to be in right now. It's a good industry to be in, especially as these things are happening, right? As inflation's happening, interest rate hikes are happening, I'm certainly, glad to be in the dental industry and in this business instead of some others at this point.
That's good, man. Will, I appreciate it, man. All kinds of gold there. I mean, if I'm a listener out there, I think I've learned a ton about the DSO industry and really what it means to sell to a DSO, what it looks like, what that partnership looks like. Will, if people can reach out, what's your contact info if people want to reach out, maybe ask?
Yeah. Hey, look, this is, well, I think we're all colleagues in this game. So look, we're not, I'm happy to help anybody that's got a question related to anything out there, especially from the business aspect of it. Our company is GPS Dental. We're based out of Jonesboro, Arkansas. My email address is WLittle, WLITTLE @gpsdds.com. Anybody feel free to reach out, any questions, anything like that. Happy to answer anything for anybody. It's a big world out there when it comes to this industry. And if I can narrow it down for some people, I'd certainly be happy to. It's do your best out there, do your research, do your diligence, and if GPS can help you in any way, we're certainly out there. If you're looking for a partnership, there's hopefully we can put our hat in the ring for you guys and cross paths with some of you guys listening to some.
That's good. Yeah, as you guys can tell, Will is extremely intelligent in this industry and is just a solid dude. I mean, I met these guys, they're just solid people and got a great organization. So if you guys have questions, reach out to Will. If you guys are listening out there today, like I say, every time, SSR, I know there is something in this episode that you could share with a friend. Share this episode, subscribe to the podcast. This was a dynamite one with Will. Leave us a high rating, an awesome review. Continue listening. Again, this is just another episode in this series, but our goal is to help you guys understand the transition process, what it means, what you can do now, get those French fries out of the cup holder.
Get them out of the cup holder. I love it. I'm going to use that, Jared. I'm going to hold on to it and use that one, man. I'll trademark it. Jared Duggan.
I love it. All right. Will, I appreciate it, man. And you guys out there have a great day, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Take care.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it.